Welcome to Micaiah Messenger. It's great to be with you guys today, and excited to share with you some interesting things regarding the end times and the Dead Sea Scrolls. Could the Dead Sea Scrolls be pointing us to the rapture timeline? And are they also showing us when the Gog and Magog war may take place? This is what we're going to find out today. But before I do that, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like and share these videos, and hit the notification bell and all that good stuff. And if you value what we bring to you, please consider giving to our channel. We do not have any ads supporting our channel, so we are completely relying on faith that great people like you will help support our channel to continue. And we are trying to bring you a great variety of things, everything from end times prophecy to end times news to deep live Bible study, which we offer twice a week on Wednesdays and Sundays. So if you would consider being so kind as to help us continue and support our channel, we would not only greatly appreciate it, but we greatly need it. So thank you so much for your help. Awesome. So let's take a look today at the Dead Sea Scrolls, guys. This is pretty exciting. I want to give some shout outs here to Christy, bless it all, Donnie. Good to see you guys. Thanks so much for joining me. Adam, Black Box. All right, it's good to see you guys. Very cool. Check this out. So we are looking at the Dead Sea Scrolls here and finding some interesting things, interesting tie-ins, guys, to what looks like is pointing to a rapture, a greater pinpoint of our rapture timeline that we're all trying to zero in on here. Check this out. This is from a fragment in the Dead Sea Scrolls. It's talking about Gog, the famous Gog of Magog of Ezekiel 38 and Revelation 20. Well, check this out, guys. It says here, this is talking about God. It says, when thou chastisest Gog and all his assembly gathered about him, for thou wilt fight him with them from heaven. Okay? Now, we kind of knew this already from Ezekiel 38, but check this out, this next part. For the multitude of the holy ones is with thee in heaven, and the host of the angels is in thy holy abode, praising thy name. And thou hast established in a community for thyself the elect of thy holy people. So what is this saying? Okay, well, in Ezekiel 38, right, we know there's a war that's going to happen when Gog comes against God, okay? And then the Dead Sea Scrolls, they are reflective of the Bible. They're influenced by Scripture. We don't necessarily consider them Scripture, but they are extra biblical texts of the same time period. They're referencing the same doctrine and referencing the time of Gog, the war of Gog and Magog, and when God actually defeats them on the hills of Israel. And as we see in Ezekiel 38, it says here, just a brief recap, Son of man, set your face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech, Tubal, prophesy against him. Say, this is what the sovereign Lord says, I am against you, Gog, chief prince of Rosh, which we know is Russia, Meshech and Tubal. We've got, included with them is Persia, Cush, and Put. So we've got everybody from Iran, basically the whole team that's gathering right now, Russia, Iran, Persia is Iran, and we've got Assyria in there as well, but definitely Turkey and Tubal. But Assyria has Hezbollah in there from Iran, from Persia. Cush is the Ethiopians, and then we have Libya Put as well. So they're all part of this, and we see that alliance happening already with Russia, and they're moving in. But one of the things we had put out before is wondering, is the Ezekiel war going to line up with the rapture, with the end times, definitely the end times, but is it going to line up with specifically the day we are taken? As it says in Revelation 6, it talks about the great earthquake happening, and we see here that when God comes down upon Gog, there is a great earthquake that he creates here, and everybody is terrified at his presence. He says, you will advance, talking about Gog at this point, you will advance against my people Israel like a cloud that covers the land. So this could be that they're coming from the air. They talk about when you see the army surrounding Jerusalem. Well, technically, they've been surrounding them for a while now. They're in the sea, they're in the sky, they're on the land. They're everywhere right now surrounding Jerusalem and Israel, and they're gearing up for war as we speak. We know Iran can't wait to bomb them to oblivion. So in days to come, Gog, I will bring you against my land so that the nations may know me when I am proved holy through you before their eyes. This is what the sovereign Lord says. You are the one I spoke of in former days by my servants, the prophets of Israel. That time they prophesied for years that I would bring you against them. This is what will happen in that day. Okay, now listen to this. When Gog attacks the land of Israel, my hot anger will be aroused, declares the sovereign Lord. In my zeal and fiery wrath, I declare that at that time there shall be a great earthquake in the land of Israel. Okay, so we're waiting for this great earthquake to happen. And what's interesting is we know that there's a great earthquake also when the rapture happens, according to Revelation 6 and Matthew 24 and Ezekiel 38 may tie into that. It's something that I proposed before. Well, it could be that those two combine. But as we're looking now, this may happen next week. And I don't know if Russia and them are quite ready for this invasion yet. I don't feel necessarily that that's going to happen next week. It could, there could be a surprise attack out of nowhere, like, when Japan bombed Pearl Harbor. It could be something like that, where they just come out of nowhere. But I think it might be more of a build-up, kind of like Ukraine was, where they're kind of start, building up their troops on the border, etc. So I don't know that there's time to do that yet. But I think when we look at this fragment from the Dead Sea Scrolls, and if we're to take this in the way it seems to come across, when thou chastisest Gog and all his assembly gathered about him, so like when he's gathered for war, he's going to create this great earthquake, right? Let me just finish this statement here. He creates a great earthquake. The fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, the beasts of the field, every creature that moves along the ground, all the people on the face of the earth will tremble at my presence. So one of the reasons we thought, well, this might be at the same moment is because we know that when the earthquake happens in Revelation 6, you can see God. His presence is there. People are saying, hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. So they know that God is there. They're trembling at his presence, right? So we're thinking, oh, well, this could be the same event. But something else I had proposed at that time before as well, as I said, well, once God opens the sky, it may remain open for the rest of the time. As we see in Revelation 19, when Jesus comes back, the sky is open, right? It doesn't say it opens for him to come back. It's still open. So once it opens, my feeling on it is that it remains open. Okay, it's not like God closes it back up again. Like once he opens it for his wrath, it's open for 7 years, and God is bringing his wrath down upon the earth. Now, maybe you won't see God the whole time. He may be hidden from view at times, but I just get the sense that once it opens, like, the curtains roll back, the sky rolls back like a scroll, and then boom, the game is on. So when they say they tremble at his presence, it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be the same moment, because they're going to see his presence for the next 7 years. Perhaps. I'm proposing that idea. But I did think, well, gee, maybe this is Revelation 6, because they're trembling at his presence, which is very similar to what happens in Revelation 6, where they tremble at his presence and they all run under the rocks and say, hide us from his face. So it says the mountains will be overturned, the cliffs will crumble. Well, that also happens in Revelation 6. And every wall will fall to the ground. I will summon a sword against Gog on all my mountains, declares the sovereign Lord. Every man's sword will be against his brother. Well, we know that's, the first seals of Revelation as well, the first 4 seals. Sword against sword. Excuse me. So it seems very Revelation-y. Well, it is Revelation-y, but it seems Revelation 6-y. I will execute judgment on him with plague and bloodshed. I will pour down torrents of rain, hailstones, and then it goes into the plagues, right? But, and I will show my greatness and my holiness, and I will make myself known in the sight of many nations. So everybody's going to see him. All eyes will see him and mourn. That's what it says. That's what Jesus says will happen. So you think, oh, gee, well, this could be Revelation 6. But, okay, and big but here, and I cannot lie. Check this out. All right, check this out. If we go back here, for thou wilt fight with them from heaven, for the multitude of the holy ones is with thee. Okay, is with thee in heaven. So basically it's saying, or seems to be saying, that we are already with God in heaven. The multitude is what we see in Revelation 7. Okay, so after Revelation 6, after the great earthquake happens, in Revelation 7, we see this great multitude. Let me go over to Revelation here so we can revelate a little bit. Revelate. Revelate. Feel free to sing and dance if you like. Revelation 7. Okay, so we come over to Revelation 7, and we know about the 144,000, etc. I'm skipping that for now. I'm just going down this great multitude, right? Because that's exactly the term used in the Dead Sea Scrolls. After these things I looked, and behold, a great multitude, which no one can number, for of all nations, tribes, peoples, tongues, standing before the throne, before the Lamb, clothed with white robes and palm branches in their hands. Now, this is right after Revelation 6, the sixth seal, which is what we see described in Matthew 24, when Jesus says the sun will turn dark, the moon will turn to blood, the stars will fall, etc. Well, that's exactly what we see happen here. He opens the sixth seal. Behold, there was a great earthquake, just like Ezekiel 38, and the sun became black as sackcloth, and the moon became like blood. The stars fell from the heaven, fig trees fell like late figs, etc. When the sky receded as a scroll, and it rolled up, and every mountain and island was moved from its place. Well, very similar to what we see in Ezekiel. So we're like, maybe this is Ezekiel. Maybe it's the same earthquake that we're talking about. So that's why I had proposed, well, then maybe these are the same earthquake, and maybe the Ezekiel invasion is going to happen at the same time. But I also said at the time, I said, but when Jesus comes back, that's a special time. I mean, he deserves his own attention. I don't feel like Gog and Magog should be stealing his thunder in any way or dividing attention here. They could be collateral damage, sure, but I just kind of felt like, well, this seems to be its own time. Jesus has to have his own time of gathering his saints. That's a very special time where all eyes are on him, not thinking about some war or invasion that's about to happen. And if you go over to Revelation 8, you'll see that there is another earthquake that happens in Revelation 8. Right before the trumpet sound, wink, wink, perhaps Feast of Trumpets. Maybe. Check this out. It says there's a half an hour of silence right after this initial earthquake, and the great multitude goes with God. And then we have this second earthquake that happens. Then the angel took the censer, filled it with fire of the altar, threw it to the earth, and there was noises, thunderings, lightnings, and an earthquake. So the seven angels who had the seven trumpets prepared themselves to sound. Well, if we go back here to Ezekiel, it's very intriguing because right after this earthquake, right, then all the plagues start to happen. The fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, the beasts, and every creature moves along the ground, all the peoples of the face of the earth trembled at his presence. The mountains are overturned, the cliffs crumble. Now, that did happen in Revelation 6, but it doesn't mean it has to stop happening. They may continue to crumble. There's a lot of mountains that got to get crumbled here, And I will summon a sword against Gog and all my mountains, etc., etc. Then I will execute judgment on him with plague, bloodshed, torrents of rain, hailstones, burning sulfur on him and on his troops and on the many nations with him. And so I will show my greatness and my holiness, and I will make myself known in the sight of many nations. Well, if we go back there to Revelation 8, when the trumpets sound, and so what I'm suggesting is perhaps we have a half an hour of silence after that initial earthquake, and God gets his kiddos out, right? Because it says here, back in the Dead Sea Scrolls, that we are with him. Now, notice it makes a distinction. The multitude of the holy ones is with him in heaven, and the host of the angels. Just so you know, he's not talking about angels there. Okay? There's a distinction. It's the multitude of the holy ones, and the host of the angels is in the holy abode, while he's fighting with Gog from heaven. So it sounds as though we're with Dad. We're hanging out with Dad. Dad already got us off the planet. He said, hey, guys, come up here before I lay out the land, okay? We get you out of the way. I'm going to do a little earthquake here so I can resurrect everybody, help break up the ground there. Makes things a little bit easier if he does a little earthquake, probably to move the ground so the people can be resurrected, just as it did when Jesus died. There was an earthquake and a resurrection. Same concept there. So it could be that when he chastises Gog, as described in Ezekiel 38, and that he fights him from heaven, which we can already tell he's doing that, right? Is that the multitude of us are already with him in heaven, and the host and the angels are with him, praising his name as he brings down wrath on Gog. And that also goes along again with this idea of these two earthquakes. Like, why are there two earthquakes, not just one? Well, there's actually a few earthquakes in Revelation, but these two are very in close proximity and somewhat significant to one another. So you have this half an hour of silence, which has always kind of been a mystery to me. Why a half an hour of silence? Well, we talked about that in our timeline, which I don't know if I still have that open here right now because I opened the Dead Sea Scrolls. But if you check out my other timeline video, I talk about that half an hour of silence, which is half of the time between the two blood moons of the year. The most amazing blood moon in 100 years, you could argue, the 3.5 hour one with the chiasmus pointing to on May 15th, and then the one happening on November 7th, both of which appear to land on true Passover and true Yom Kippur, if the calendar's bumped a month back. So very intriguing. In any case, there's this half an hour silence, and then there's another earthquake, and then we get the angels sounding. Well, Feast of Trumpets, right? But it's not going to be a Feast of Trumpets of celebration. It's going to be trumpets of wrath, right? Just like the grapes of wrath. It's going to be trumpets of wrath. So instead of us celebrating on the Feast of Trumpets, we're going to be dreading. Not us, but the people on the earth will be dreading. We're going to be celebrating. As it says there, we're celebrating, right? With God, it says, his holy ones praising his name. Like, woohoo, go God. We're going to be like, yeah, God, bring it, man. You are laying out your wrath. And we're going to be praising his name. Look at God, man. Look at him go. We're praising our dad. As he's going to be, he's going to have his kiddos with him, kind of showing us his stuff. Like, hey, guys, watch this. It's just like a dad would do with his kids. We're gonna be hanging out with him. Wow, Dad, what you doing? How do you do that? How do you make those earthquakes happen? Okay, so then the angels start sounding the trumpets, and what do we see here? Says blood, there, hail and fire followed. Okay, the first angel sounded, and hail and fire followed, mingled with blood, and they were thrown down to the earth. Well, what do we see back here in Ezekiel? We saw some hail. It says pouring down torrents of rain, hailstones, and burning sulfur, and a plague of bloodshed on him and his troops, right? Isn't that what we see? And that's exactly what we see when the first trumpet sounds following this earthquake that happens here in Revelation 8:5. Then we see the hail and fire mingle with blood. They're thrown down to the earth, and a third of the trees are burned up, and all the green grass was burned up, etc. Then the second angel sounds something like a great mountain burning with fire thrown into the sea. So there's more mountains crumbling, only this time they're on fire. It's just all havoc is breaking loose. It's just crazy. So very intriguing indeed as we look at the Dead Sea Scrolls as a possible clue to the fact that maybe this is the earthquake, that we're talking about in Ezekiel 38. Maybe it is this one in Revelation 8, and that we're going to get sucked out of here in a week. Wow, wouldn't that be awesome? Wouldn't that be awesome if next week we get sucked out of here? Around August 11th. And again, go back to the timeline video to check more about that. And then we have that half-hour silence, and then all of a sudden, here comes Putin finally saying, hey, now's my chance. The Christians have been sucked off the earth. Everybody's kind of in chaos. Now's my chance to move in and get that natural gas, get that oil in the Golan Heights. Let me move in now and take them out as he gets all his troops in place. Now that Iran has the nuclear bomb and everything else, it all falls into place there a half an hour later, and he's ready to rock. And of course, he gets rocked by the Lord, of course, as he will at the end as well, which is also here. I want to end with this. It's very cool. So also in the Dead Sea Scrolls, check this out. If we look down a little further, talks about Jesus, okay? Talks about the Messiah coming at the very end, the 1,000-year reign. And we know in Revelation 20 that Gog comes back. It's not the end of Gog. That was not the end of Gog. It's like a movie, man. There's like sequels here. The return of Gog. Gog returns from the grave. And there shall come forth a rod from the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of its roots. Right here, up here, if you see what I'm reading. And the Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding. We know this from the Bible, right? The branch of Jesse, it talks about that in the Bible as well. The Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge, and there are of the Lord. And his delight shall be in the fear of the Lord. He shall not judge by what his eyes see, or pass sentence by what his ears hear. He shall judge the poor righteously, and shall pass sentence justly on the humble of the earth. Interpreted, this concerns the branch of David, who shall arise at the end of days. God will uphold him with the spirit of might, and will give him a throne of glory and a crown of holiness and many colored garments. He will put a scepter in his hand, and he shall rule over all the nations. Okay, which is exactly what happens in the millennial reign. There's still all the nations out there. We reign with Christ, but all the other nations are still there. And Magog and his sword shall judge all the peoples. Okay, so let me be clear about that. He will put a scepter in his hand, and he shall rule over all the nations. And Magog, he'll rule over Magog as well. And Magog, and something happens here. See, when they got these dots here, it's because these are fragments. These are Dead Sea Scroll fragments. So you don't know exactly, there's bits and pieces here. But here's the bits and pieces. He will rule over a scepter in his hand. He shall rule over all the nations. And Magog, and his sword shall judge all the peoples. Right? Then we have Judgment Day. After Gog and Magog come after the 1,000-year reign. Check this out. It's actually in Revelation as well. Look at this. Revelation chapter 20. It's amazing. Revelation 20. He says here, and he says, now the 1,000 years, okay, so after the millennial reign, right? This is after the millennial reign. After the 1,000 years were over, Satan is released again from prison, and he goes out to deceive the nations which are in the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog. Isn't that what we just read? That's what we just read. It says he'll put a scepter in his hand and he shall rule over all the nations and Magog. Okay? So this is the same thing. We're talking about after the 1,000-year reign, and it says it right here in Revelation as well. Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, whose numbers as the sand of the sea. They went up on the breadth of the earth and surrounded the camp of the saints, just like they did the first time. Like they didn't learn their lesson, but it's been 1,000 years, so it's a whole new generation who have to learn the lesson all over again. Isn't that true? We always have to keep learning the lessons of our fathers. What can't we just learn from history? They went up on the breadth of the earth and surrounded the camp of the saints in the beloved city, and fire came down from God out of heaven and devoured them again. So Ezekiel 38 happens the first time when they're surrounding Jerusalem. And here it happens again when they're surrounding Jerusalem. And fire comes down and devours them. Now the first time, fire, I guess fire and blood and hail did come down in Ezekiel there. But they kind of get rocked. Their world gets rocked. But that war goes on for another 7 years, just to be clear. Because you're like, well, is this the same war? No, that one goes on for 7 years, as we find out in Ezekiel 39, which perfectly lines up with the beginning of the tribulation. 7-year tribulation, 7-year war. Isn't that interesting? Right? If we go back here to Ezekiel 39, it talks about that. I'll just show you that real quick. It says for 7 years. So then those who lived in the towns will go out and use the weapons for fuel and burn them up, the small, large shields, the bows and arrows, the wars and clubs. For 7 years they will use them for fuel. So it's a 7-year war that that takes place, and it just happens to line up with a 7-year tribulation. And then after Jesus comes at the end of the 7-year tribulation, he reigns for 1,000 years, then they come back again. They're like, let's get him this time. Like they didn't learn. Like, no, that's Jesus. You can't do it. You can't do it. Dude. But they didn't listen. They went up on the breadth of the earth, surrounded the camp of the saints, and the fire came down from heaven to devour them. The devil who deceived them was cast in the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are, and they will be tormented day and night forever and ever. Amen. So there you go, guys. Just a little quick update from the Dead Sea Scrolls and how that may be pointing to the fact that we are going to already be with God in heaven when the Ezekiel 38 and 38:9 war takes place, which may just line up with Revelation 8, the earthquake there, which means we are looking to get out of here now. Hopefully next week. Well, today would be even better, but you know what I'm saying. According to the timeline, next week is looking pretty good for a rapture. Sounds good to me. Doesn't it sound good to you? All right. Love you guys. I'll be back with another update coming soon. Please help our channel. Subscribe. Support us. We love you. Have a great day. See you soon.